The calendar is almost empty. One email, one errand, one call you keep moving to tomorrow. It does not look like a busy day, but somehow there is no room left inside it. That is the confusing part about feeling overwhelmed. The visible list can be short while the invisible load keeps growing, and those two kinds of weight do not always match.
Think of that visible calendar as the things everyone else can see, your appointments, your errands, the structured parts of your day. But underneath all that, there's something else going on. It's like this growing shadow stretching way beyond the edges of any single task. That shadow? That's the invisible load. It's the weight of all those unfinished decisions, the constant stream of interruptions, and those quiet worries playing in the back of your mind. Add in emotional strain or ongoing family and financial responsibilities, and you're suddenly carrying a whole lot of weight that doesn't show up on any schedule.
So let's talk about our internal experience and what really lies beyond just being busy. Busyness is something you can easily measure from the outside. You just look at a schedule, tally up the hours, the meetings, the tasks. But feeling overwhelmed, that's an entirely internal experience. It happens when the demands placed on you suddenly feel a whole lot bigger than the attention, time, or energy you actually have available in that moment. It's not necessarily about how many things you have to do, but the sheer mental energy it takes to process just one of them.
The visible quantity of your tasks is honestly just a tiny slice of the experience. What really adds up is all that invisible weight, the stuff that doesn't get a neat little time block on a piece of paper. It's the unresolved decisions. It's the exhaustion of constantly switching between tasks, the endless digital input, emotional concerns, or just not getting enough rest. You might literally only have one phone call to make today, but if it remains delayed, unresolved, and tied up with other pressures, it casts a massive, heavy shadow over your entire day.
Which brings us to what happens when we hit our mental capacity, when things start getting a bit tangled. Maybe you find yourself opening the exact same email 3 times without ever answering it, or you suddenly feel completely irritated by a totally harmless notification pinging on your phone. These aren't symptoms on a clinical checklist, they're just metaphors for what it looks like when your internal load is already maxed out. When the mind is at capacity, even the absolute smallest incoming demand can feel incredibly difficult to process.
It's exactly why you might finally sit down to rest at the end of what looked like an easy, uncomplicated day, only to realize your mind is still holding on to all those unfinished matters. It's why we sometimes actively avoid a simple 5-minute phone call or stare at a menu and feel totally paralyzed about what to pick for dinner. The actual tasks around you might be few, but everything feels heavily crowded because your mental space is just full.
Now, there's a careful contrast we need to make here. Having an active, packed day absolutely doesn't automatically create a state of overwhelm. Some people actually thrive on a full schedule, as long as the tasks are clear and they feel well supported. On the flip side, a quiet-looking day doesn't guarantee mental ease. 2 different people can go through the exact same schedule and have a completely different experience, depending entirely on the size of the invisible load they happen to be quietly carrying in the background.
And it is deeply important to warmly reassure you that feeling overwhelmed from time to time is a completely normal part of regular stress. It happens to all of us, as our glass slowly fills from the various streams of daily life. Feeling this way doesn't diagnose anxiety, burnout, depression, ADHD, trauma, or any other specific condition. It simply means that, right in this moment, the internal demands are exceeding the capacity you have to manage them smoothly.
So, as we begin to untangle that shadow and bring some gentle reflection back into the picture, take a moment to really ask yourself what exactly is taking up space in your mind right now that doesn't appear anywhere on your visible calendar. What are the invisible weights casting the shadow over your time? Honestly, instead of looking for a generic list of advice, it's usually much more helpful to ask yourself a few specific questions. Which decisions keep reopening in your mind? Which responsibilities in your life feel entirely unclear right now, or maybe even completely out of your control? When you start identifying these things, you finally begin to see the true shape of the demands you are quietly managing.
As you look closely at these invisible demands, think about what could realistically be postponed, reduced, clarified, shared with someone else, or simply written down on paper to just get it out of your head. Now, addressing this invisible weight isn't going to make it disappear instantly, and we have to manage our expectations carefully. No single technique is going to solve persistent overwhelm overnight, but gently shifting these notes, naming them, and sharing the load can slowly begin to thin out that shadow.
This does not diagnose anything. If feeling overwhelmed is persistent, painful, or making ordinary life difficult to manage, speaking with a qualified professional may help. This explainer is for quiet, source-grounded stories that make private experiences easier to understand. You can subscribe to the channel if that is the kind of place you want to return to. Remember, a light calendar does not always mean a light mind.